Hello, and welcome to the Wild Blue Podcast, perspectives on aviation lives, lifestyles, and business.
Hi, this is Chris Kirk at Wild Blue Aircraft Sales, and you are listening to the Wild Blue Podcast, where we focus on aviation lives, lifestyles, and business. And each week we sometimes banter back and forth within the office. Hopefully you find it both entertaining and or you learn something. And then oftentimes we have the pleasure of interviewing others within aviation. Some are clients, some are just folks that we found a deep interest in and want to share that with you. And I think we kind of hit all of those boxes with this week's interview. In fact, we're going to cut this into two parts. So it will be this month and then next month as well. And this podcast is with Frank Weisser. This interview is with Frank Weisser. Now, Frank is a recently retired Navy pilot, and he flew 2 tours with the Blue Angels. And so he has got a tremendous amount of advice, but just a lot of fun stories to share with us. Frank's a great guy. Several years ago, I called upon him to set my son with his Civil Air Patrol unit up for a kind of an in-person greeting or meet and greet with the Blues when they were in town, and he just was just so gracious in facilitating that. And so Frank is also a customer of ours. Frank bought a 58 Baron from us, and he's just got some interesting things. This is not an interview you're going to want to miss. Todd and I did this earlier in the summer, and finally getting it posted for your enjoyment. And again, it's a 2-part interview. So enjoy Todd Mitten and my interview with Frank Weisser.
No, I was going to ask you. So you didn't learn how to fly before you went to the Navy. You didn't have any civilian experience.
No, I did not. I learned in the T-34C, and I was, in my estimation, an incredibly bad student pilot. And the Navy rewards you on how fast you learn rather than how good you are at the end. So I struggled with something as simple as taxiing, and then failed my first check ride in the T-34 for Safer Solo. So I don't feel like I was a fast learner, but at some point I was able to light a fire and figure it out.
Yeah. So at what point did you start getting interested in general aviation? Because you're an airplane owner.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. So I finished my flight school in Meridian, Mississippi in 2002, and then stayed around. The Air Force does it more prevalently than the Navy does. We have something called a SIR grad, a selectively retained graduate. It's a little similar to a FAPE in the Air Force. We'll generally grab one guy a year, and I don't know really the purpose of why they do it, aside from the fact that I said I'd wanted to fly single-seat jets out of Oceana, and they said, okay, well, we'd like you to stay here for a year and a half and be an instructor, which I did. And the nice part about doing it was in the T-45 Charlie, which was at the time brand new. We were still accepting them new at the time. And it could go to 41,000 feet. It had decent legs, and it could shoot ILS approaches. And it was just a really great little airplane to fly. And so I was an instructor in that for a year and a half. And it allowed me some time to go to the local airport and get checked out. First in a 152, and then go get a tail dragger endorsement in the Cub and do a little more flying. And then what I found is on the weekends I'd take students on cross countries for their radio instrument flights or their airway navigation flights, but I'd have Saturday off because we'd fly in on Friday and leave Sunday. And I'd generally go to the local airport wherever I landed and just go flying, rent a Cessna for an hour or something, and take friends or take family flying. So I kind of took to it in that regard. And then about the point when I was getting ready to transition out of the military, I thought, well, I've got this skill set. I don't want to see it go to waste. So I thought it'd be fun to at least buy a family airplane, which is how, of course, you and I met as I was looking at what airplanes were appropriate. I'd settled on a Baron for a variety of reasons. One, for the redundancy of the second motor, but then also for enough space for our family. My wife and children aren't great at packing, so we generally have way too much stuff, and the Baron seems to do a nice job with max gross and performing. And I had also bought property in an air park in Northeast Georgia called Heaven's Landing. So we had a hangar and a lot to build a house on. And so I just thought it was a cool way to transition some of my aviation experience to civilian, and then continue to use it, whether it's for work to get around or whether it's for the family to vacation, that sort of thing. So that brought me to you, and of course was able to. I believe you brokered the sale of the Baron that we bought a few years ago, and oddly enough, as we put it through annual and made a lot of changes to it and modifications and fixes, I took possession of that the same day my last Blue Angel Air Show happened. And that was just total luck, but I landed in Pensacola on a Saturday in early November 2017, 3:30 or 4 o'clock, and the Baron landed at our local airport at about 15 minutes later.
Oh, wow.
So I thought that
What
was
a
really,
day.
really cool. It was like the end of one chapter, start of a new chapter.
And I was there at that air show. That was also
Oh,
my
that's
last.
right.
That was my last military cross country, and we flew home the next day. But that was it.
I should have taken you home in the Baron.
Yeah.
Although I couldn't fly the thing to save my life. I found a CFI at the local airport who had some Baron time. And although I was qualified to fly it, I eventually went to flight safety to learn some stuff in it. But we go flying for a few hours. And at one point I said to him, listen, I want some feedback. Tell me the stuff I'm doing wrong in this thing. And if it's not standard, I'm not deliberately doing it wrong. I don't know better. And he said, well, for starters, you don't need to tell the control tower that you're a single Baron at 5 miles. They know you're alone. They know you're by yourself. And I've just been so used to it. 20 years in the Hornet, flight of 2 or flight of 4, or worst case, a single Hornet 8 miles out for the overhead. And apparently I was telling Tower that I'm a single Baron 5 miles out for the straight end. But yeah, good to know. I haven't made that mistake since.
Yeah, that's funny because I remember hearing that at local airports, and you'd hear the, especially when Air Force guys where I was, in the pattern, and they'd call gear down. I'm like, hey man, you don't necessarily need to do that anymore.
Yeah, I had a close friend on one of his first Gulfstream flights. He's a 550 captain, and he was preparing for a visual approach. He said, "A beam gear touch and go." And the guy in the right seat was like, "Hey, bud, we're not doing a touch and go for Gulfstream."
Yeah, yeah. So you said this, so I want to bring this up. So if you're listening to the podcast, we also do a video of the podcast. The video is posted on YouTube, and Frank mentioned Heaven's Landing. So he's got his. He's sitting in his. You're in the hangar in your home right now.
I'm in the hangar right now. I'm going to see if I can change the lighting on it.
Yeah.
Yep, and then out the back is the runway there.
I mean, what a view!
It's really something.
So go take a look at that. You can see, I'm just sitting here drooling over the windows, and not much less the runway that's out there in the background. But so how did you get involved with Heaven's Landing?
Well, so I found it in an internet search. While I fix my camera here, I found it looking at an airport north of us called Mountain Air, which is a fairly well-known. It's a country club golf course, but it's a 3,000 foot or even smaller runway on a 5,000 foot tall mountain. And in searching that area, I found that this little town in Northeast Georgia had a 5,000 foot runway at about 2,700 feet. And it's an area I knew well, having grown up in Atlanta, and I had come back up here as a kid and as a Boy Scout. So it blew me away. I flew back from Germany almost right away to check it out and fell in love with the place. I still, to this day, have not seen its equal in terms of mountain air parks where you literally can live with your airplane and be amongst a neighborhood of other. We have almost 180 lots and probably 120 owners. All of them are pilots. Everyone loves aviation. We have a fly-in happy hour every Friday afternoon. It's just a really unique spot. And like I said, I fell in love with it. And it's an airport with a long enough runway that you can come and go almost anytime you want. We'll have some low mountain obstruction fog certain mornings, but generally speaking, it's a 24/7 airport with a GPS approach and RNAV into it. And it's super. It's 20-minute flight down to Atlanta. I can get to and from Pensacola in an hour and a half. We're out to the beach at Charleston or Myrtle Beach in an hour from here. And that's Baron time. Oh, by the way, I mean, I can be in the Bahamas in 2 hours in a Baron.
Yeah, that's sweet.
It's a really cool spot. And so we had built out a hangar. We built kind of an office and a living area inside of our hangar. That's where I'm sitting now. And then we built our home a year after that. And I was still finishing up my time with the Blue Angels, and we had essentially a change of management up here. And the gentleman who owned the neighborhood asked my wife and I, my wife's a real estate broker, and I've done commercial development, asked if we could take over for a time being and run the place. And it's been an interesting mix of requirements. You can't, unlike a normal neighborhood, you can't just turn it over to an HOA organization, because I'm taking calls from Atlanta Center on a regular basis. We had a runway repair required on Sunday night. The runway buckled this past Sunday, and we had just an onslaught of people returning from Oshkosh. Our whole neighborhood goes up to Oshkosh just about,
Sure.
and about midpoint of the runway, there was a 15-inch buckle, and so it becomes an immediate, notification to all the owners and a quick fix the next day with the concrete trucks out here repouring the runway and that sort of thing. So it's a unique job for us to manage both the neighborhood and a runway, and we have a clubhouse and a pool and 600 acres of land. So it's kind of a labor of love, because it is a really cool spot. And there's no one who's new to the place. Everyone loves airplanes. We all have that in common. So conversations are easy and enjoyable. And everyone who flies generally has you don't find many boring people in aviation. So everyone has a exciting personality and it's fun to talk about their adventures. So it makes for fun hangar crawls from one to the next.
Yeah.
Now, Chris, it's inappropriate to bring up Navy landings in the runway buckling, so let's not even talk about that right now.
I had my share of really crummy runway landings at Evans Landing for sure.
Well, I will say from
the F-18 where if I wanted to land fast, I could just push the nose down, dissipate all the energy into my landing gear. I mean, we would try to land at 720 feet per minute, but if I felt like landing harder, I certainly could.
Wow.
And I tried that once in the Baron to stop faster, and I had a negative effect.
Yeah. Yeah, that can have a negative effect on the wallet too.
Yep, no doubt.
Well, I will say that as a former air park resident, if you ever move out of there, you'll have severe withdrawals. Oh, it was horrible. For 2 years, all I could think of is like, why did we do that? The hangar was in my backyard. We'd go out there and tinker with the airplane. I built an office out there. People would what was cool is people would just fly in and they'd land and they'd pull up into our backyard and just, come knock on the door. Hey, it's like, man, this is just as cool as it gets. So it's different when you're not there anymore. So if you ever have that opportunity, it's worth it. It really is.
Well, I'll tell you, it was hard for me sitting in my family room overlooking the runway where we'd be having dinner. I'd be working and I'd see, we have a attorney who lives and works up here, and he has an RV. He's built a number of airplanes, but I'll see him on a Thursday afternoon, drive right past the hangar, and 5 minutes later, there he is off in ground effect, getting ready to pitch up 45 degrees. And I just have these like extreme jealousy issues going, oh man, what I'd give to come home from work right now and just go fly around for half an hour. And we have another former Navy F-14 pilot turned Southwest captain who built an RV, and his goal is just to fly every single day, just for no other reason than to enjoy flying and get comfortable in his airplane and that sort of thing. So really cool for that aspect. But then, of course, as soon as I'm done on the podcast, I'm going out to take care of a gentleman in a citation. So we've got everything from Challengers and Falcons landing at this airport down to tail dryers.
And tell me again how long that runway is?
5,200 feet.
Oh, wow. Geez, that's sizable.
Yeah.
It's a great runway. And it, like I said, it can serve every airplane. I believe that things like King Airs and Pilatus probably do best around here. They've got plenty of power down low and the ability to stop fast, but we put everything in here.
Wow. Are you still involved in commercial real estate development?
Yep. And that's what my wife and I plan to do. And we've had to slow down our efforts personally a little bit because the neighborhood takes so much of our time. But we have done that, both commercial and residential development. That was sort of our post-Navy plan for ourselves. And then I went a little more than a year ago and got typed in the Gulfstream 450 and 550 just so I could fly something other than a Baron for the rest of my life.
Wow. You need an RV-8.
Yeah,
I do need an RV-8.
That's what I fly.
And there's plenty of room to take a nap in the back.
Yeah, Chris naps, and I mean, you'd think someone would be more interested in RV-8 than napping, but that's Chris.
But it works out well.
This is just so fascinating. I'll tell you, Frank, it's fun to get to catch up with you and learn about your career and where you've gone since. I'm curious if you're, will you miss the Navy, or is it kind of like, I'll miss it, but it's definitely time to move on? What's your thoughts on that?
It's funny. I think that's probably true for most people, especially ones in the military, is I think I'll miss the people most of all, and that's not a corny, cliched line. I believe, and actually the sailors and Marines that serve on the Blue Angels are truly the best in the business. I have, I think, a soft spot for the men and women that are in normal squadrons who join the Navy for various reasons, but find themselves, we're all out there on an aircraft carrier together. We're all in it together. As I've often told people, I might be their boss or vice versa, but everybody works for somebody. There's no one's at the top of the food chain, no matter who you are. So you're all in it together. And I thought I had actually flown my last flight back in 2013 in my fleet squadron out in Moore, California. And I was sad to see the airplane go, but I think I was most sad about the people. Yeah. I have had a love affair with only one airplane in my life. It was my 6th jet that I flew my very first time on the Blue Angels. It was when I was number 7. I had flown all of our 10 or 11 F-18s, but there was one that flew better than all the rest. It just so happened it was the boss's airplane, so that's not by mistake that it works that way. And I just loved it. So I every single day with my maintenance department, whether I was buttering them up with compliments or buying them cocktails at the bar, I was working that airplane for my next year. And one thing led to another, and I was able to fly it for my whole year. And probably 500 sorties flown, maybe 495 were in that jet. and I just love the thing. And I flew its last flight before I went to the boneyard, so I had a hard time saying goodbye to that airplane. But that was it. The rest of them, come and go, I feel like. But that one in particular, I was especially fond of. I have a picture of my wife and I with the tail number or the number there, and it's kind of the two loves of my life all in one picture. But I also, a close friend of mine that I gave a VIP ride to made a film about the Van Nuys Airport called 16 Right. And
yeah, it's a great film.
Yeah. And that Brian's a close friend of ours, and his work is just, in my opinion,
Terwilliger, is that his name?
Brian Terwilliger, yep.
Yeah, that's
and
a great
one of my
show.
favorite lines in his movie in 16 Right is there's a gentleman in his hangar talking about his logbook, and he wrote in his logbook, "This is a love story." And it's just the coolest dang line, and it speaks to aviation and how, at this point, my wife would be grabbing photo albums and I'd be grabbing my logbook as we ran out of the burning house kind of thing, just because it's what you wouldn't want to forget. It tells the story of your life. And,
that's a fact.
That's why I keep a paper logbook to this day. I don't do the digital logbooks. To me, it's like a diary. Sometimes there's nothing to write in there, but a lot of times I'll especially my general aviation stuff, I'll write in there, little blurbs and excerpts and things. And I'll go back and I'm like, oh yeah, gosh, I've forgotten all about that. It's a lot. And when you write it, there's personality with it. You don't get that with the digital stuff.
Exactly.
So I was going to say, because I was going to change gears a little bit. So speaking of movies, have you ever been involved in a movie?
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I was about 2 years ago. I was working as the transition officer for the Blue Angel Super Hornet transition. And we got a phone call in our transition office about some challenges they were having with some low altitude scenes. This is Paramount and the making of Top Gun 2. And as I understand it, the director and main actor and producer were trying to figure out how to get a F-18 at incredible low level altitudes, ingressing for, a seeming bombing run kind of thing. And the Navy had limits. Generally, our limits are 200 feet, been out not for landing, of course, but for normal low level flying. And that's waverable down to 100 feet, but they were looking for the 10 to 20 foot range. And so the head of our aviation said, it's not possible. So let's move on. And after some back and forth, as I understand it, they came and said, well, could we find a Blue Angel to do it? And of course you can. We have at least number 5 flies at high speed, low altitude every single day. But the current team there was quite busy with their normal show season. They couldn't devote 7 weeks of flying in San Diego and Nevada and that sort of thing. So the call came to me. I had plenty of experience doing so. And so what I liked about it from the Navy's perspective was they really wanted a lot of Navy pilots flying in that movie. Well, Paramount for sure wanted it to be done properly, not CGI, but all legitimate in the airplane filming. And the Navy looked and said, we want to use our junior officers. We don't want to have a bunch of Navy commanders and captains doing this. And so to the degree they could, they did do that. And they found the experts in every field. So if it was stuff off the aircraft carrier, they used the carrier instructors from our training squadrons. If it was dogfighting, they used our Top Gun instructors from Top Gun. And then when it came to these few random scenes through, canyons or at low altitude over the desert or in upside down filming, that was sort of my forte from having done it for so long with the Blue Angels. So I came in to do those sorts of things. So the scenes I was involved with were flyovers for the funeral, and then for a low takeoff over the ground that kind of rips the top off the building, and essentially the low altitude stuff was my contributions to the film.
This is going to be it'll be exciting.
Yeah.
I will say that the filming is outrageous. I flew it. It was just like Blue Angel Air shows. It was challenging. There was slim margins. We spent a lot of time briefing and debriefing, and then to come back and see the film afterwards was remarkable. And there was talk even then of having kind of an extreme version, because you could almost make yourself sick just watching the film of what you had just flown.
When is it?
And that's a testament to the cameras.
When is it due out?
I believe this Thanksgiving, but it's been unfortunately slid a few times due to COVID. I'm somewhat optimistic, cautiously so, that it'll be one of the movies that brings America back to the theaters.
Yeah, I hope so too. And my daughter and I were talking about it driving back from Oshkosh the other day. And she's like, Dad, I've never seen the first Top Gun. And I'm like, well, what kind of dad am I in aviation? So I told her, I said, I think we've got the DVD. I said, we're going to watch that, because I cannot believe that I've shown her all the other classics, from my youth, but she's never seen that one. So we got to spend some time doing that here over the next few days.
I've never believed your story that you were a body double in the volleyball scene. I don't believe that story.
Me and Val Kilmer, man.
No, I
Well, I was grateful. It was one of the first things that, even though my family had grown up with Blue Angel Air Show, it was the first times that they were actually impressed by Dad or by my wife's case, by her husband. She literally had watched hundreds of Blue Angel Air shows, and I'd flown off aircraft carriers for multiple, 2+ years of my life, and that didn't seem to impress her. But seeing the trailer and knowing that it's me in there, or seeing the back of my neck, was enough to make them pleased that I was actually working for my pay.
Yeah, this is going to be fantastic. I mean, I'm as excited about the movie anyway.
Yeah.
But now this is just another reason. That's fantastic, Frank.
Yeah, anything that could bring people into aviation and give them a new experience, I think that's awesome. So, well, Frank, I'll tell you what, I think we could go on and on and on, and I so much appreciate the time that you've spent here. But we want to honor our commitment to keeping this at the time that we told you, and maybe someday you keep the door open and we can do it again.
Yeah, let's do round 2, maybe after the movie comes out, or once everything's kind of put to bed.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
We need to get down there and see.
I was going to see
Landing. Gosh, that would be fantastic. That'd be
last summer, and we're going to do it again next summer. We rented a house on Lake Hartwell. And
that's our chosen lake. We spend most weekends there. It's about 45 minutes. So if you come into Hartwell, I'll grab you in the Baron and bring you back in.
Okay, because we fly in there. So we fly into Anderson's usually what we do. So that's what we're going to do again.
That is about 6 minutes by air from me.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, we got to get together, have a beer or something. Let's do it.
Sounds terrific.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Frank. Great catching up with you.
Likewise.
Appreciate you.
Have a good week. Great talking to you guys.
All right. You too. Thank you.
All right. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Blue Podcast. Find us online at flywildblue.com. And don't forget to subscribe and share.